District, thank you, District 2 and District 5. All the candidates were invited, and these are the ones that responded. So we have Pat Carpio Aguilar and Danny Choi. Oh boy, sorry about that. Danny Choi. Um, so they have been presented the questions beforehand with the exception of our lightning round questions. And those questions are easy, fun, get to know you questions. What I have shared on the screen, I think folks can see, is the districts that got redistricted in the past several months. So we have District 2, which is the northern Sunnyvale. So our Sunnyvale community will vote on those if you're in that district. And then District 5 is Cupertino mostly. Is it all Cupertino? Use your mic, please.
Right, I have one of these. So it's West San Jose, a little bit of Cupertino, a little of Santa Clara, and some of Saratoga.
Wow. Okay. Well, so and this meeting will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel, so you can go and listen to it to help you make a good informed decision for this election. So we will start with our opening statements. And Pat, would you like to go first, please?
Yes, thank you. So good evening, everybody. Buenas noches a todos y todas. I'm Pat Carpio on the ballot, Pat Carpio Aguilar. And to my students, I'm Miss Carpio. And I am a middle school teacher. I teach in Colombia. I've been teaching for over 40, this is my 42nd year. And I've taught here in the United States and in Mexico from where I am originally. And I am very excited because this is obviously an historic event. There has never been representation on the Fremont Union High School District School Board from northernmost areas, zip codes, which is 94089, where I live, and 94085. So this is an opportunity for representation. This is an opportunity to be seen and heard and feel valued at the board level because our students matter and our families matter. And this is the moment where I can hopefully earn your vote. If you haven't already made up your mind, this is an opportunity that I really, really value to be able to speak to how I believe in education and the policy level of education. Thank you.
So Danny?
Hi, I'm Danny Choi. I'm running for the Trustee Area 5, which you saw a moment ago on that map in the lovely turquoise. I'm usually starting off my stump speeches by saying that I'm a graduate of Lynbrook High School way back in the class of 92. So if you check classmates.com or wherever you can find yearbooks, you'll see a version of me with a lot more hair. My son currently goes there right now as a sophomore. And I think of my journey there as kind of a precursor to a lot of the struggles that our current students face. I grew up with high expectations academically, grew up believing that you only had 3 vocational options in terms of graduation, as in doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And it took me a long path, including an abortive run at law school, before I decided maybe I should have done a little bit more thinking on this. So I took a convoluted path to becoming a teacher, which I've happily been for the last 12 years. I currently teach at Liberty Alternative School in San Jose Unified School District. And prior to that, I taught at Willow Glen High School. And there was a stint about a decade ago where I was also in the Sunnyvale Middle School, at Columbia Middle School, the Sunnyvale School District. I am a firm believer in public education. That's where I've been educated, where my son's been educated. And I believe that people on the school board should care about public education as a whole, as well as, of course, their communities that they are serving. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we'll start with our first question, and the candidates have a minute and a half. This is the first trustee area election for Fremont Union High School District. What steps should be taken to address historic inequities in North Sunnyvale? Pat.
Thank you. Well, I think that we are here. This means that we are already taking steps in the right direction. We have noticed this for a while. The inequities have been there. The need for attention, the need to be voiced and heard has been there. But they started to become more evident in the last couple of years, in the last year, where people spoke and they said, how come we are not present at the table? And that is a large statement. So the steps in the right direction have already happened. The fact that we are here today is a demonstration of that. And people are interested. So they're not just speaking, they're also taking action. And I would have never thought of running for board while I was working, but now I see that it is urgent and there's a need. And I am very, very honored to um, visualize my students that I'm teaching right now, accessing like all the other students being in the board that I will be serving as well, and seeing them achieve lofty goals. And so the steps are going in the right direction and it's happening already. Thank you.
So as I was prepping for this question earlier today, I had some prepared notes, but I was thinking about how we deal with inequities in our society kind of gets at the heart of whom we are as a nation. Like where you stand politically in the United States uh, relates deeply to how you answer the question of how should we deal with historic inequities that have occurred or that we have perhaps taken part in the course of our history. And I think the best way forward is first to acknowledge them and then to see how we can work to basically fix things or make them right. We need partnerships. I've spoken with members of the Fremont Union High School District Board and Superintendent Graham Clark. They have done a great job of addressing the long-term outlook of the board and the plans of the district. Their vision is crystal clear. We support our existing schools, but that also includes the ones that serve our students in North Sunnyvale. I've also spoken with Mayor Larry Klein, who's given me a very impressive kind of overview of some of the steps he's taken in order to address the housing and infrastructure needs that students and families need at North Sunnyvale. I welcome the opportunity to work with officials at the city level and at the municipal level in order to create and implement solutions for our students. My opponent would have you believe that the purpose of trusteeships is to create mini fiefdoms where each side fights for resources from the same source of pie. And I am out of time, but I'll tell you that it's hard work, but being collaborative is better than being combative.
Thank you. So our next question, how would you address the transportation issue for students getting to school and getting home when there are extracurricular activities? Danny.
So I think of this as both an external and an internal kind of approach. Externally, I'd like to work with municipal transportation agencies, making sure we've got the opportunity to advocate for additional routes and schedules that cater towards students. So if we need to increase afternoon kind of ridership so that way students have the opportunity to attend more of these extracurricular activities, that's something we should look at. Internally, I'm thinking about how our district can perhaps expand bus ridership, bus service, so to speak, or shuttle service. And I don't think it has to be an all or nothing approach either. We can be looking at, for instance, specifically sports team shuttles, club shuttles, without necessarily saying, oh, we need to reinvent the whole bus fleet or wheel that the fleet exists on, so to speak. I also looked at the possibility of perhaps internally creating messaging apps, not just for the school to talk to the parents, but for parents to talk to each other. If they have an easy forum by which they can arrange carpools where they can talk with other parents, not only does this give us an opportunity to implement like multiple step solutions toward this, where it's not just one kind of, I guess, I'm losing my metaphors here, but one kind of solution that addresses everything, but it also gives us a chance for communities to really knit and bond together, which is at the heart of what we do at a school district. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I live in really the north part of Sunnyvale, and I took a bike ride over the summer to feel what my potential constituents would feel if they were going from where I live all the way to school. And most people would say, oh, that's a 20-minute bike ride. It's not. You get there in over 30 minutes, having to weave in and out of traffic. And I didn't do this during rush hour. I did this at the convenience of my time. And so it was 10 o'clock in the morning. I did skip breakfast on purpose to kind of mimic what the students would do. They want to sleep in a little bit more, so they skip breakfast, and I threw in granola bar in the backpack and left. So I lived through the feeling of what it is to get to school. And when I got to Homestead, I was tired, I was hungry, and I thought there's got to be a better way. But even if there weren't, Santa Clara does have buses for their high school students. So the solutions are already out there. And we know that the hopper already exists in cities around us. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to do best practice and go along with learning through that. And maybe even start bike programs where you can give people bikes or scooters. And that would also be better for the environment as well, not just for the congestion of the cars and the buses and everything that's vehicles on the road. So those are some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. According to demographers, school enrollment has been trending down. What strategies would you propose to ensure the long-term sustainability of our schools? Pat?
Well, this question brings about the thought of where is enrollment going down? Because I'm a teacher and the school where I work doesn't have declining enrollment to the degree that other areas do. So obviously it's going down in certain areas. We don't deny that. However, this is something that has to be figured out on a larger scale, because if you live in a place where there is no access to newer homes, newer families are not going to go and live there. If you are unable to purchase those homes because of the real estate value, not the real value, but the real estate value, you might want to live there, but you can't afford to. So I think that there is a solution there in terms of assessing how can we make it affordable for families, young families, to live in that area, because otherwise declining enrollment is not within our control. And if that conversation continues, then we must be flipping the question and asking ourselves, why can't we have a school where the population is growing? And that is something for maybe a decade from now, because we need census data, but it is something like follow where the people are and provide the services where they are instead of the other way around. Thank you.
I think Pat does a really, I think, trenchant job of pointing out the big elephant in the room, where declining enrollment is just one of the consequences of a larger affordability issue, the housing crisis. I think I heard something like 82% of residents believe that housing is the number one problem affecting their day-to-day life. And you think about the need of shelter and the ability to be able to live where you want your children to grow up, to be safe, to have a good education. And those are problems that we are handling on a piecemeal basis in the state. We hear the stories about different towns which are resisting state mandates to come up with sufficient housing plans and proposals. And I know some cities in this district are working more effectively, I would say, than others when it comes to that. So I think as a school board member, I don't have that much control over that. I do advocate working with town officials, city officials, to be able to see how we can encourage and advocate for these policies. But outside of that, I do not have any illusions about my ability to fix all of these things. Internally, I think in terms of offering specific programs, whether they are magnet programs or FUHSD has something called pathways, where vocational programs are offered at each individual school. And I think that also includes Dianza. So I think making sure that we offer career vocations that I think will become increasingly popular in an age where we're worried about automation and AI taking jobs. There are some jobs that will remain AI proof for a long time. We're still going to need those professions. Thanks.
Thank you. Bullying is an ongoing problem. What can be done to ensure students are safe on school grounds in and outside of class? Danny.
As a teacher, I think of this from a relational standpoint because I work best with students. I'm able to help students best when they feel safe in talking to me. That said, you can't just copy and paste personalities and relationships from teacher to student to teacher to student. And we wouldn't want to. But in terms of being able to encourage a whole school environment where the bullying is seen as both unacceptable and dysfunctional from the top down, I think is the goal for every school and for every admin and teacher whom I've met. So I think education is one thing. I know that the SEL rollout has been troubled in some ways, and I think that's because, right, we kind of it together piecemeal during the COVID outbreak. But I do think if we have formalized structures in place, training in place, specific counselors in place, I think the FUHSD has already started on creating wellness programs and making sure that there's trained mental health personnel who can listen to students and staff in the event of issues where people feel they are being bullied or they are feeling not safe or they are having intrusive thoughts. That's a big portion of this, creating a community where people feel like, okay, I know whom to report to. I know whom I can talk to without being kind of overlooked or dismissed. So that way we can say, hey, my friend over here, they're having a really hard time and they're saying some disturbing stuff. And if we can stop things before they become a bigger problem, that's always my goal. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're talking to two teachers. We see this. We understand that it happens. It's very unfortunate. And to say that either one of us would have the answer would be a bit of an overreach. But what we do see is the impact of education. So when you educate people about their civic and social responsibilities to one another, youth is an idealist age. You want to do right. You want to fix the world. You want to take ownership. And if you just educate people about how to value each other and how to see the best in one another, it opens up channels of communication. And like Danny said, relationships are important, but relationships are also hard. So we have to acknowledge that we need guidance, and therefore the counselors and the spaces to go and feel acknowledged, and also if you need to make reports. But teach people how to stand up for one another, teach people how to voice and say things like that's not okay. And they learn from us also by example. So if we are doing the right thing, it's very hard to learn to do otherwise, because education and love starts at home. And if there is somebody who is expressing a bullying behavior, that's communication. We need to address that, because what they're saying is, I need help and I don't know how to ask for it, but you should be noticing this is not okay. And you're the adult or adults. And so please help me, because I know this is wrong and I'd like to be part of a better and more a healthier community. I just need help right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Assembly Bill 3216, Phone Free School Act, means that schools need to have guidelines by 2026. How would you implement this, Danny?
Well, I this is a word that I don't use with myself in the same sentence much, but right now I'm currently at a kind of libertarian stage with this. I feel as a classroom teacher, most teachers have their own ideas as to how to go about doing things. Some of them think it's a very big deal. Others decide this is not a hill that I want to spend time defending during my 50 minutes or my block schedule of events. I know that I regularly implement QR codes in my classroom. So being able to tell students, don't use your phones here and then use them phones here, that creates kind of an inconsistent messaging there. I want my students to feel empowered to know how they go about doing their job, but I also want them to respect boundaries. And I think it's a good idea that we do implement some kind of uniform passage and expectations, so that way we can move to a society where we're not so concerned or so focused on wringing our hands about students who are just obsessed and glued with our screens. And honestly, this is one of those things where, as Pat mentioned, teachers have to model this as well. I think adults, right? I don't think we as a society, as adults, has figured out how to come to a good balance with screens either. I know I haven't. So trying to figure out a way where we can move forward for the betterment of society, that's really at the heart of what we do at public education.
Thank you. I got excited when I heard about this. It made my heart sing, like, oh, I will get back to teaching the way I really enjoy doing. And I couldn't fathom in the moment over the summer, like, what will this look like? But the more I've thought about it, um, administration is also looking at it, not just teachers within the classroom having these discussions. And they are now sending out research to parents about how having this constant urgency to look at you that screen that is not educational impacts how you're thinking and what you're thinking, and the synaptic bridges that are there to be conducive to information are kind of like gelling in the direction of what is entertaining instead of what is educational. And so I think that we start with education. We start educating the parents. They're the ones that enable the phone for the child. No person under the age of 18 can sign a telecommunications contract. So it's the parents. You start there. And then we are a one-to-one district, and I believe most of the districts in this area are too. So really, there is no need for this additional almost pseudo appendage that students carry around. What you do is you have a landline, and if in a dire emergency something were to happen, landlines are not jammed, cell phones are. And so you don't really need the excuse of this is for an emergency. You're at school to learn, and school gives you the resources and the methods to do that. And enjoy human nature, look into each other's eyes, discuss. And that's the way you get to society to be more relational rather than technic.
Thank you. Next question. What criteria would you use to evaluate literature and textbooks used in the curriculum? Pat?
I love curriculum. Curriculum design was always kind of the space where I invested myself. And whenever there is a chance to look at something new, I always go back to the adage of, is this pertinent and transferable in the future? So looking at the content, engaging for the student, your end user has to like what they're doing. Is it engaging for the teacher who's going to be teaching it, so that then it isn't an uphill battle because the students might like it, but the teachers and the department have to see the value in there too. Is this socially a social construct that uplifts and builds? So are the images and is the content culturally diverse, and is it respectful of the people in society that we see and we should see? And does it deliver, well, as a board member, you also have to think, does it deliver in the sense that it's going to last long enough that the investment will be paid off? So if you take into account all this, and obviously you get a committee of teachers and parents and everybody who's interested to give their opinion, that should hold for a proper evaluation of what the curriculum is doing to show the values of what you can do, how to approach issues in society, make it so that you're a critical thinker and that it stays with you over time because it's valuable. Thank you.
So the use of evaluation procedures to talk about literature and curriculum, I feel is kind of inseparable from this idea of, well, parental concerns. Are my students being taught, are my children being taught things that are relevant or things that are actually beneficial to them? There's always concerns from parents about this might be sending a bad or harmful message. And I think, well, I think of, to broadly generalize, of post-World War II, Germany, and Japan. As an Asian American, I'm pretty well familiar with the broad strokes of how Japan's approach to talking about World War II has upset a lot of its neighbors. Korea, China, a lot of nations suffered under the acts of the Imperial Japan. Sorry, ceding my time to the motorcycle. But the Imperial Japanese Army and Japan has not helped its case by basically trying to refuse to acknowledge it or brush it under the table. Similarly, Germany, on the other hand, has made teaching about the atrocities of World War II a mandatory portion of their curriculum. And I think we all agree that that would be a better approach, so that way these societies don't make the same mistakes they had in the past. I think we have to be willing to take that same hard look at our history and be willing to acknowledge we have greatness, but we also have committed some pretty terrible atrocities in the past. And I don't think that speaks of us in a terrible way. I think that's just the most honest and intellectually proper way to do things.
Thank you. Next question. How significant do you believe the achievement gap is between different communities within the district? What specific actions would you propose to close this gap and ensure equitable outcomes for all students? Pat?
Significant, very significant. I say this because I teach in Northern Sunnyvale, and some of my former students um, are still connected with me. And the classes that they are taking are not the classes that I think other students in other parts of the district are eligible to take. And I think there is a disparity there. And while a lot of the discussions or rationale might be around, well, they're not ready, I'm wondering, well, what can we do to make sure that they are? Because it's not on them, it's on the adults in the room and the people in the community that do make these decisions. What do they need? What are we missing? We should just kind of shrug our shoulders and say, well, 80% of the students are doing okay, and we have X number of schools that are highly acknowledged and recognized nationwide or statewide. We should say, if you have 5 children and 4 of them are nourished and one is not, people might notice. And so you have to figure out, how do we solve this problem? How do we make it not only equitable, but lift up those that have been brought behind, whether it's through tutoring, offering more, just more alluring courses, things that are more attractive, and providing the safety systems and the network for families, students, and the community themselves. Like right now, we're going to have a library. Well, not right now. Eventually, we're going to have a library. That's a promising step in the right direction for the students who otherwise wouldn't have access to that. Also remember transportation. So a lot of things that we have to work on. So yes, substantial.
So the first question was, how significant is the achievement gap? And I think the only answer I can fairly say is it's very. I've grown up in a couple of school districts. I went to Eastside Union High School District for my freshman year, and then went to Lynbrook for the remainder of my high school career. And I saw firsthand how having a different kind of neighborhood, a different kind of environment, totally changes the way you approach education. I went from a student who had mostly C's and B's to someone with straight A's, not to pat my own back too hard there, but I would say the difference was having an encouraging environment where students really felt like, no, this is important for me. I'm going to make my academics a priority. I think the theme that I keep on coming back to, though, is the learning exists within a larger community. My parents grew up out of the wreckage of the Korean War, and they had a lot of struggles growing up. They had lots of siblings. They did not have an ideal kind of childhood when it came to the infrastructure available to them, but they also had the advantages of the flexibility, the mobility to have opportunity, to move to California, to get an education, to purchase real estate in the Bay Area. Some of this stuff is unthinkable for people of my generation and certainly for my kids. So learning doesn't just begin and end at the school doors or the school hallways. They happen outside of the community. And I think a lot of what we do is predicated on our willingness to go outside and partner with and communicate with officials at other levels too.
Thank you. Are the programs at Fremont Union High School District um, that they have implemented supportive of LGBTQ plus students? Danny?
I think if you were to ask any individual worker, employee of the district, they would say, yes, we certainly try our best to, and I think they'd be speaking honestly. However, the way I look at it is from my classroom perspective, where I've seen students at San Jose Unified talk about the bullying they faced, compared to when I ask students at Fremont Union High School District what it's like for trans or LGBTQ students there. And at least for the Lynbrook area, I get the sense that there's not as much comfort in talking about it. So while people may say there's no problem, that doesn't necessarily mean there isn't. It just means people may not be feeling safe about being able to talk about this openly. So I think being able to, again, create resources, curriculum, have staff who are supportive of this, because these are children. I have personally taught students who were rendered homeless because they came out to their parents, and this is not an ideal outcome. We want to be able to let them know they are supported for whom they are, regardless of what orientation they are, regardless of how they identify. They deserve our support. And I think to demonize them for this or to accuse other people of trying to indoctrinate them for expressing their identity is a bad faith argument, and it fills me with, honestly, a lot of ire. So sorry to end on such a downer note, but I think we need to be supportive of them 100%.
So it's really hard to follow Danny because I mean he nails everything so eloquently. But uh, all students are our students, and all students deserve to be supported and acknowledged and loved and valued and held accountable. And so I think the question is, have we done enough? There will always be more work to do. But I think because high school is a time when you're discovering who you are, you're coming to terms with who you want to be in the world, you're figuring out what areas of life interest you and how you can express that through either a career or even like taking a gap year or something. You're developing a lot of your adulthood in these teenage years. And to be told that there's a part of you that is not acknowledged is, I mean, I have to think it's life shattering. Like, how is not all of me okay with society, with my school, with my teachers? Now, teachers, we are very accommodating and supportive and loving. And when we see our students, we just want to help and continue to help them grow. I also think this isn't just about LGBTQ students. I think the message is the staff, parents, everybody who, regardless of gender identity or income or language, has to feel welcome and accepted and valued and, well, basically not discriminated against or singled out for any of those reasons. It's first, and it's the law. So that discussion is just like nothing else for, ethical values. Just abide by the law.
Thank you. Let's see. How does Fremont Union High School District support students pursuing alternatives to a four-year college? And what additional steps would you suggest, Pat?
There are options, not just a Fremont Union High School District, for people to explore different venues to become the grown-ups contributing to society that they wish to become. So for instance, they might be interested in a four-year college. They might be interested in going to a community college locally. They might be interested in, like I said, taking a gap year, and they might be interested in going into the workforce immediately. And all of those are options that the Fremont Union High School District and other high school districts have been considering and pondering as options that are valid and that have, they have this intent that is by design. Like, you don't have to be the same thing that everybody else is. You find your way and we help you along the way. So the district is doing a good job with helping students find that their expression. Like, if you're more interested in art, do you have to go to art school, or do we have ways for you to start exploring that now? And 10 years down the road, maybe find that you're already, living off of your artistic talents. Or maybe you want to go into the industry and you want to start out figuring, can you get a restaurant launched from scratch? What would that look like? And it sounds like a lot of fun if you're in the kitchen for somebody who doesn't cook. I don't cook. But what about the finances? What about budgeting? What about all that? Those are really practical skills that the district is also teaching the students right now. Thank you.
First off, you should learn how to cook. No. The second, no. I mean, I'm a experienced microwave chef myself, so like that part's pretty easy. But I think of myself in coming from the background where young students like me, Asian Americans, being asked, how do you feel about going to community college, or could you take a gap year? And the thought strikes a lot of them with horror. They go, my parents would kill me. Usually not literally, but still the sense that this is a not prestigious, shameful approach to take is not something, again, that we can just fix in the classroom. But I also remember, to kind of show my age, I grew up with access to shop classes. I took metalworking, I took auto shop. And I think, like, when I talk about magnet programs in order to be able to alleviate enrollment declines or imbalances within the district. I also think about how a lot of these vocational kind of classes allowed us to be visible to the campus in a way that could have sparked interest or awareness for students too. When you see a classmate of yours coming out talking about a cool project they did on the shop car or something that they made in the class themselves, or how Mr. Choi almost cut off his finger because he was careless with things, right? Like people perk up and it kind of opens them up to a life that they may never have thought about. So I think being able to be visible about our programs and seeking to expand partnerships again with local trade organizations as well as our existing pathways class is the approach to go.
Thank you. Communication with parents can be challenging. How would you improve parent engagement and keep them involved in their students' education? Danny.
Wow, I wish I knew the answer to that one. My son is a sophomore, and while I think we have a very close relationship as far as father-son relationships in America go, it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. If I ask him about school or about his day, there's going to be a very obvious pushback. There's going to be a, it was fine, and that's, I think, normal. That's part of raising a teenage child. So, in addition to the problems of parents just trying to parent, you also have to deal with their children becoming teenagers and growing up with all the stresses that are inherent with that. That said, I think we tend to get tunnel vision when we talk about communication between parents and the rest of the school because they're a larger community. One of the ways that I kind of relax when I have some downtime is I look at, for instance, one of my favorite subreddits on Reddit. There's this one called Daddit, Daddit. It is one of the most wholesome subs out there. I go there because it's not filled with negativity or horror stories. It's just a bunch of other dads who are communicating with each other, asking for advice or sharing their successes. It is a really great kind of community online through there. And I think if we could invest in that again, whether it's some kind of mobile communications app for the parents at each school, but something where they can kind of connect with others and realize they're not alone. There's other people they can talk to who are going through the same things that can help them feel a lot more control and investment in their child's education. Thank you.
Well, as a language teacher, I live and breathe communication. I just love hearing people's stories. I obviously like to share. But when you get to high school, and like Danny was saying, how was your day? Whatever, it was fine. And then you're trying to almost hook little tidbits of information from your teenager to inform you, how is school? How is everything? And it just isn't coming out. So I'm thinking, let's flip the conversation. I was having trouble communicating with the parents of my students when I was writing emails. So I asked for help. I asked the district, and they said, oh, you can text them. And I said, yes, but I'm not going to use my phone. And lo and behold, there is an app or a system or some sort of device. Actually, it's not a device. They just put the program on your computer where you can text people. And guess what? People respond like instantaneously. And I was very surprised. So I am not a texter, but I guess for communication, I do now. And if Kamala Harris and anybody else who's running a campaign can text me, I think that we can text each other and show interest. And also the district can just put a little invite to everybody's inbox, student, parent, or constituent saying, we're having board meetings. We'd love to have you. Come on over. And it's just a matter of automating things that can go out. We don't have to send paper. We can if we want to, but it's expensive, environmentally not sound. And people respond to technology that they're familiar with. And communication is about reaching out. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, so that was easy, right? No. So now it's our lightning round, but that was very informative. I miss school. I don't have any kids in school right now, not any high school, but anyway, it's fun. So the first question, what volunteer activities do you participate in, Pat?
Right now, not enough, but I would say too many. Too many because there's just a lot that you want to do. So, for instance, at the former school where I was teaching at Sunnyvale Middle School, I started what it was called the Knitter's Niche. I taught students to knit. And it was just so fun because we did everything. I brought in tea and cookies and fruit, and we went outside in the quad, and it was just picture perfect. I see those pictures now. And I loved it. And so when I transferred to Columbia, I actually asked, can I teach knitting like for real, like not just a club? And they accepted. So I have loved teaching people to knit. That's one of the things. And I also participate because I love engaging with parents. When the ELAC meetings happen, I'm not in charge of them, but I show up because I want to see the faces of the people who gave me the gift of the students that I teach. So wherever people are, I just go and say hi and hang out.
Thank you. Danny?
I don't have a great answer for this one. I've got a second job for one thing. I tutor in the afternoons and evenings, so it makes it tough for me to volunteer. And I don't say that by way of excuse. I would say my real excuse is after I quit law school, I wanted to be a writer, and writers are a notoriously misanthropic bunch, right? Like we're a bunch of problematic people who abuse substances and don't know how to do relationships, and they live in their own imaginary worlds. And by nature, I'm kind of an introvert anyway. I'm definitely an introvert. And so working with folks like is something that I've learned to do. It's a skill, and I'm looking forward to this step of my journey in the school board.
Thank you. Danny, what was the last book you read?
Man, I do a lot of reading online. I feel like, and I tell my students too, it's so hard to read books. These days, I read a lot of articles from things like The Atlantic or Washington Post. The last book I tried to read was about, what was it called? Sapiens, I think. It was about the path of how we were when we domesticated wheat, the wheat domesticated us. So I now live in fear of our carbohydrate overlords, but it was a pretty good premise.
Thank you, Pat.
It was just today for the nth time. I was reading The Little Prince, not from, cover to cover, but it is one of my favorite books. I read it in 3 languages and I saw it pop up at our school library in Spanish. And so I was just excited. And it's a huge, it's not the traditional little one that you can carry in a bag. And I started reading it because I always model for my students. And then somebody picked it up and they wanted to read it. And today somebody checked it out. And it's just like connecting to the imagination of a child to figure out how, as an adult, did we lose that interest in the world and seeing things through their eyes. So I still get goosebumps. It's not actually my favorite book, but I loved seeing it there. And I guess the teacher book that I read lately was Street Data, and that was quite a while ago, like last summer. This summer I didn't have time to read. So I guess right now the book that still sits in my heart as of this afternoon is The Little Prince.
Thank you. What extracurricular activities were you involved in high school? Pat?
That was a long time ago. I'm not afraid to date myself. I take honor in the years that we lived on this planet. I did not participate in as many as I would have liked because I'm the oldest of 7. There were a lot of siblings to take care of, a lot of uniforms to wash. And those Catholic schools really like their uniforms nice and pressed. So I guess there was a way where that became sort of therapy for me. So right now, if you tell me that I'm having a bad day, I'll say, I need to go do some laundry. And I actually iron and I like organize stuff like that, and it makes me relax. So I guess if there had been, that would have been the extracurricular if I didn't have to babysit like a lot of people. But if I had lived in I guess, an ideal world, it would be just spending a lot of time in the library, reading a lot of books, and just figuring out the answers to the world through those books.
Just to call back to the previous question, I realized I did read a good mailer the other day. It was Pat's. Um, so as a high schooler, I did, let's see, I was on the mock trial team 1 year as a freshman. Again, that whole dream of becoming a legal wizard. And yeah, that didn't turn out so well. I was on the JV football team for Limbrook in 10th grade. We were actually close to 500, which makes us, I think, one of the top football teams in the school's history. Again, not trying to brag, But fortunately, I wasn't that good at it. I hurt my shoulder early on, and I mostly rode the pine. But I think of all the saved potential concussions since then, and it honestly turned out for the best.
Thank you. So, Danny, what was your favorite class in high school?
Art with Mr. Akamichi. For one thing, I met one of my best high school friends there who's a super talented artist and designer. He's been helping me actually with the designs on some of my campaign material, so we're still friends to this day. But I found out that my talent was not so much in art, but in needling him and telling him, I think the chin still looks wrong on that painting you're doing. I think I created one pastel like portrait the whole semester, might have been the whole school year. It was a really good one, to be fair, but like I was not as into it as I was just learning how to make friendships of somewhat clumsy healthiness and relationships at the time. And thankfully, he was patient enough to put up with me and grow with me together.
Thank you. Pat?
I think that I'd have to say Spanish literature. um, no, no. I mean, I also liked English a lot. I think it was pragmatic. I was good at English, but I really liked Spanish. And I did not enjoy algebra as much. And then I learned that my algebra teacher was married to my Spanish literature teacher. And I was so good at literature. And he was disappointed with me. And he said that I wasn't paying attention. And his wife told him, and I didn't know until later, she told him, oh, this is a wonderful student. So you should probably like brush up your teaching skills, because if she's not getting it, then you're probably not teaching them right. And I'm like, oh, cool. I mean, I learned algebra eventually. And I want to go back to my hobbies. When I was 14, I think I taught myself how to play chess, like I taught myself how to knit. And so I was trying to teach my siblings how to play chess. It didn't take, but knitting did. And so now I am living again through my students. I want them to play chess. And so I bring out chess boards every now and then, and I prefer them use the actual ones rather than the electronic ones, because I like that kind of like sitting across from somebody and doing something interactive.
Thank you. And the last question on our lightning round is, Pat, if you could have a superpower, what would it be?
I have a superpower. I am a teacher. I am an advocate. I care about people and I demonstrate it and I show up. And some people have asked me, and who was your favorite teacher? And I keep saying this very honestly, me, because I put a lot of work into what I do. I give myself with a lot of attention to my students, a lot of patience, as Mr. Choi was saying, and just a lot of consistency, reliability, and looking at them and just seeing the promise of what they will become. And so we are all superheroes every day. We just don't acknowledge it. And so I thank you for the opportunity to let you know that I think that is a superpower. Teaching is not for the faint of heart. You got to have a lot of stamina, a lot of belief and idealism for the future, and just a lot of ganas to get this done.
Thank you.
Yeah, Pat's got the best answer for that. 100%. I think, let's see, superpower wise, my other superpower is I'm really good at coming up with the right thing to say about a minute afterwards. So I'm thinking about Pat's answer about basically you caused marital strife between your teachers, which I think is quite an achievement. But other than that, I guess if I had to choose one, I'd want like a high metabolism. That's really all I want at my age.
Thank you. Thank you. Very good. This is always fun. So now we're just at our closing statements. Danny.
First off, thank you guys for having me over here at Livable Sunnyvale. I really appreciate the opportunity to check in with you and get a sense of what matters to you guys, because I think that's what connects us, right? Even when we live in these very polarized times, part of what seems to be missing is the sense that we can see each other as human beings. And I find that, when you do hear about those rare stories where people are able to connect despite being very diametrically opposed to each other in politics or philosophies, it's because they spent time together. They they had a meal together. They sat down and played a game together or worked some volunteering thing together. And I think that what I want to do as part of the Fremont Union High School District Board is be able to reach to people and let them know that I'm here to help you in good faith. You don't have to agree with me. I mean, I don't agree with me all the time either, but we do agree on trying to make a good community for our students and for the places that we live in. Thanks.
Buenas noches, estudiantes. Este mensaje es para ustedes. Como su maestra, quiero mostrarles el ejemplo de lo que es hacer algo difícil y pararse de todas maneras todos los días y seguirlo intentando. Voy a abrir el camino para que ustedes puedan representarse de manera automática en el futuro, para que vean el ejemplo, para que sientan que tienen el poder de la representación y para que hagan el esfuerzo no solo de ayudarse a sí mismos y a sí mismas, sino a todos los demás. Hay mucha gente que podemos ayudar y estamos aquí dando el ejemplo, dando lo mejor de nosotros. And for those of you that don't speak Spanish, talk to my 12, 13-year-old students. They'll help you out. I was talking to them. So representation matters. It makes a difference, and we're opening doors, and that's why we're here. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. As always, this is such a pleasure to be able to sit here and be with passionate candidates. We are nonpartisan, so we do not endorse, but part of what we do at Livable Sunnyvale is to educate and outreach. And this was fantastic. Thank you for your time and being here. I know when I spoke to, it's busy time, and so we truly appreciate you giving us your time. Thank you. And that's all I have. I will say, in terms of, we applied for a grant to help outreach to our Spanish-speaking community, and we got the grant thanks to Agnes Veit. Thank you. So we will be trained on using Wordly next week, and in the future, our meetings will have that capability. So we're working on doing that because so many people don't speak English. And there's a lot of people in our community we are missing. So thank you. That's it, folks. Thank you very much.